We talk a lot about the mental health toll on new mothers, but we are completely ignoring the dads. 8 to 16%. Now think about that number for a second. That is actually the percentage of men who report experiencing postpartum depression. We constantly and rightfully talk about the massive mental health toll on mothers. But the real, often completely hidden stakes of what we're looking at today are sitting right here in this statistic. Fathers are going through these profound psychological shifts, and yet they're largely just doing it in silence. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're really going to validate, demystify, and unpack the true psychological landscape of modern fatherhood. We're basing our whole journey today on some deeply personal, frankly fascinating research into first-time UK fathers. It's a look at how societal demands have shifted so rapidly that a lot of men are finding themselves navigating completely uncharted emotional territory. To really ground our exploration, let's look at the actual guys whose raw, lived experiences make up the core qualitative data of this study. We're talking about a diverse group of working professionals in their early 30s to early 40s. You've got auditors, teachers, engineers, managers. They're married or in partnerships, working full-time and raising toddlers. Their voices are going to guide us through this entire analysis, giving us this incredibly rare window into their actual daily lives. The foundation for everything we're exploring today is a 2023 study from the European Journal for Qualitative Research and Psychotherapy. We'll be looking at an interpretive phenomenological analysis. I know, it sounds like a massive mouthful, but really, it's just a powerful research method that prioritizes standing right in the participants' shoes. It's not about crunching massive, impersonal datasets. It's about asking, hey, what does it actually feel like to be you right now? The paradigm shift, evolution of the father. You see, fathers today are literally caught between this inherited model of a passive provider and the brand new expectation of being a deeply involved, emotionally available co-parent. Think about the traditional father, often seen strictly as the breadwinner and the distant disciplinarian. But today's modern co-parent, he's expected to be on equal footing with the mother, actively nurturing, rolling up his sleeves for domestic duties and infant care. It is a massive, massive psychological leap to make in just 1 or 2 generations. Hearing these men reflect on their own fathers, there's this widespread acknowledgement that the parenting playbook has just completely changed. Like Jacob points out here, men in the past kind of had the luxury of being the relaxed fun guy who just stepped in occasionally. But modern dads, they realize that blueprint is entirely obsolete for their own lives. They absolutely know they can't just sit on the sidelines anymore. And that brings us to a really beautiful realization. These men actually possess an innate, willing desire to actively co-parent and forge deep connections. They're not being dragged kicking and screaming into these new roles, not at all. They view fatherhood as a totally natural progression of their own masculinity. They want to dismantle those old gender divisions of labor, and they are super eager to give themselves entirely to their partnerships. But willingness doesn't magically erase the difficulty, which brings us to our next major theme: expectation versus reality, the Instagram illusion. It's crazy how social media creates this potent illusion, leading a lot of men to assume fatherhood is mostly just highly curated, joyful moments. Instead of relentless work, Matteo's quote is incredibly revealing. He mentions how even his own friends completely buy into the fake narrative his pictures project. When the cultural messaging around us only highlights the magical moments, it sets up an absolutely impossible standard. A lot of fathers actually entered this role envisioning what researchers call the movie scene expectation. You know, playing and having fun for a solid 2 minutes before the scene neatly fades to black. So they were completely shocked by the daily, grinding intensity of raising a tiny human being. The reality is the constant mouth feeding, the endless teaching, the non-stop vigilance. It's a 24/7 job, and there is no 2-minute movie montage that can truly prepare you for it. And then we have this stunningly honest admission from Bill. He says he never really gave it that much thought. That highlights a massive gap in how society prepares men for the transition to parenthood. When asked why he decided to become a father, his response shows how the expectation of having a family is just accepted as a natural step, which sets them up for a completely jarring reality check. There is virtually no cultural infrastructure preparing men for the mental and physical toll they're about to endure. The hidden struggles, exhaustion, and fear, the sheer bone-crushing tiredness these men experience is just staggering. Imagine a 4:30 a.m. wake-up to a crying toddler, followed directly by the intense pressure to perform professionally at 9 a.m. That leads right into this heavy, heavy guilt at 6 p.m., culminating in forced, repetitive roleplay with a toddler, when their energy is just completely depleted. It's a relentless cycle of exhaustion that deeply impacts their mental capacity, their patience, and honestly, their self-esteem. This quote from Edward offers such a profound look into the modern father's dilemma. He plainly says, "I usually feel guilty or tired." He's constantly torn between this deeply ingrained expectation to provide financially for the family and the equally powerful modern expectation to physically be present for his child and his partner. When he's at work, he feels guilty for not being home. When he's home, he's just completely drained. And the research thoroughly validates this struggle, showing that beneath the surface, fathers are grappling with a really heavy landscape of undesirable feelings. They have intense fears about their child getting hurt. They worry endlessly about negatively influencing their kid's future. And perhaps most painfully, they experience profound shame when they lose their patience or feel frustrated over something as simple as a toddler having an accident for the third time in one day. They feel like they shouldn't be struggling, which of course only amplifies the anxiety. The invisible parent, feeling unnoticed. There's just a profound lack of societal and institutional acknowledgement that fathers face today. Fred describes feeling like a second-rate citizen in the medical world, entirely dismissed and ignored by health professionals who direct every ounce of their attention to the mother. He physically and emotionally wants to be right in the center of the ring, but society just keeps pushing him into the corner. Mothers are often treated as the absolute default parent, which naturally leaves fathers feeling incredibly unvalidated. They feel like they have to work twice as hard to build a natural emotional bond with their own kids, like they're constantly trying to win their approval. And when a distressed child naturally gravitates toward the mother, well, fathers often experience quiet annoyance and frustration, wondering, why isn't what I can offer enough? Add to that the fact that society rarely, if ever, asks fathers, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that sense of isolation becomes very, very real. Hearing this vulnerability from Andres is absolutely essential. It completely shatters that stoic male stereotype. He says it's literally heartbreaking that his work prevents him from spending the time he desperately wants to spend with his daughter. These fathers are not emotionally distant by choice. No, they desperately want to connect. But structural work obligations and stubborn societal norms often stand like a giant brick wall right in their way. Embracing the messy truth, the meaning of fatherhood. Through a mix of humor and brutal honesty, men like Fred demonstrate a really necessary acceptance of the sacrifice required to successfully parent in the modern era. You just have to love his perspective here. If you wanted an easy life, you really should have just got a hamster. This humor is definitely a coping mechanism, but it's also a deep, genuine acceptance that the immense difficulty is simply the price of admission for the whole experience. So, the ultimate takeaway here is that modern fatherhood is a complete paradox. It's a polarized reality where extreme stress and extreme joy exist at the exact same time. These men freely acknowledge that it is the most stressful thing they have ever done. But in the exact same breath, they describe unparalleled emotional fulfillment and a sense of absolute meaning they couldn't find anywhere else. Pretending that stress doesn't exist helps absolutely no one. Embracing the messy truth, that's where the real growth happens. I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder. We've asked fathers to step up. We've demanded they abandon the distant, passive roles of previous generations and become deeply involved, emotionally intelligent co-parents. And they're trying. But has society stepped up to support them? Are we offering them the grace, the structural support, and the emotional acknowledgement they actually need to thrive in this new reality? Next time you see a tired dad, maybe just ask him, "How are you doing?" It might mean a whole lot more than you know.